Number 3, the home is always spotless. You all just got a stomach bug and you've been throwing up for the past 3 days? I don't see the problem. Just make sure your husband is quiet and settled in his own space with his own sterilized trash can. Give a sterilized trash can to each individual child. Sterilize each trash can after every throw up in between scrubbing the toilets. Where will you throw up, you ask? If you're a perfect Catholic wife, you won't. Hello, I'm Madeleine Karako, the world's leading expert on how to be the perfect Catholic wife. You better listen to what I'm about to say, or you will be doomed to complete and utter failure. So put down the dominoes and take out the casserole dishes and listen up. Number 1 of how to be a perfect Catholic wife. The perfect wife is never angry and never disagrees with her husband. You have your own opinions? Get rid of them. There's no room for independent thinking when you're a perfect Catholic wife. Number 2, every meal is homemade. You have 12 children and you just had number 13 2 days ago? Don't care. If the meal has not been made out of your own blood, sweat, and tears and doesn't satisfy the tastes and particularities of every single member of your family, then I really don't know what you're doing. You're not a perfect Catholic wife. Number 3, the home is always spotless. You all just got a stomach bug and you've been throwing up for the past 3 days? I don't see the problem. Just make sure your husband is quiet and settled in his own space with his own sterilized trash can. Give a sterilized trash can to each individual child. Sterilize each trash can after every throw up in between scrubbing the toilets. Where will you throw up, you ask? If you're a perfect Catholic wife, you won't. Okay, so hopefully you all understand that the first half of that video was totally tongue-in-cheek, not meant to be taken seriously, and that it's just for fun. But I do think as Catholic women, as Catholic wives, sometimes we do put those pressures on ourselves of just these unrealistic expectations that the home always has to be spotless, that every meal has to be homemade, and that we never, we can't slip up. We have to have this like perfection going on that just doesn't exist. There's no perfect Catholic wife. And anybody that knows me knows that I am far from it, that I have a lot of growing to do, a lot of work to do on my soul. So I just wanted to turn to some Catholic saints that I think can help us do this sort of perfect wife mentality in a more balanced and healthy way, because those are still good pursuits. Wanting to cook for your family, wanting to provide a clean home, wanting to be in accord with your husband and not in disagreement. Those are all good pursuits, but we have to do them in a balanced and healthy way that doesn't diminish who we are and our role as an independent woman. So the first one I want to talk about, and I'm going to talk about from this book called Saintly Moms. This book has a lot of different saintly moms to turn to, saintly wives. And I got to interview the author of this book recently, and she's just fabulous. And so I wanted to talk about one of the women in here. She's not technically canonized yet. Her name's Blessed Anna Maria Taji. And she was known for sort of a lot of different things, but sort of this ability to critique in such a loving and tender way that you didn't really know you were being critiqued, but you still got instruction and communication. So in this book, it says, when her husband used bad words or spoke ill of the servants, she would not correct him at the moment, but quieted his spirit with words of affirmation about the good that he had done that day. So Domenico, her husband, admitted to a biographer that there were times when his actions needed correction. She could give advice charitably. So this is a direct quote from her husband, Domenico, that this biographer attained. She could give advice charitably, and I owe it to her that I was corrected of certain faults. She corrected you with a kindliness that cannot be described. For all her ways so disarmed you that you were irresistibly obliged always to do what was pleasing to her for the good of the whole house. So by overlooking her husband's faults and seeking his virtues, Anna maintained peace in her home. So that is one of the stories in this book that really stood out to me because it's something that I really struggle with. Someone does something wrong, I feel like this sense of justice and this need to correct and to say that was wrong. But I think just like Anna Maria Taji sort of harnessed this ability to do this in a way that didn't bring that person down, but instead lifted them up. And in that, encouraged them to be better instead of a critique that drags them down and makes them want to kind of defend or even just kind of turn away. Her method of doing this made the person want to be better, made them want to strive to be better themselves, not because that person said so. And obviously, any kind of worthwhile change has to come from a desire from within. So definitely turn to Blessed Anna Maria Taji if you are like me and are looking for inspiration and different ways to be instructive, but in a kind and loving way that brings a person closer to God and rather than further away. Another woman who did that really well, another saint who did that really well was Saint Monica. She also had a husband that wasn't very respectful. He was basically an atheist for the majority of their marriage. She was very kind, patient, and loving with him. She didn't speak to him in the same disrespectful way that he spoke to her. And he eventually converted and was able to convert to Catholicism before he died. And St. Monica is definitely the reason why he did that. And, another saint who I always have to mention, St. Zelie Martin. She was another really saintly wife. She and her husband were both very saintly people themselves. And she also just sort of guided with a quiet force, it wasn't a masculine, demanding, do what I say kind of thing, but her husband really did allow her to lead in many ways. She was the sole provider for their family for the majority of their marriage. She was the one providing the income, and he allowed her to be that position in the family. And she didn't demand it or, pressure him into it. They came to the decision together, and it was a really beautiful support of both of them. Another book that I wanted to mention, it's called Searching for and Maintaining Peace by Jacques Philippe. And it covers a lot of different things, but there's a quote in it that pertains to married couples, and I wanted to read that for you. When we are powerless, let us be quiet and let God act. How many people lose their peace because they want at any price to change those around them? How many married people become agitated and irritated because they would like their spouses not to have this or that fault? The Lord asks us, on the contrary, to bear with patience the faults of others. We must reason as follows. If the Lord has still not transformed this person, has not relieved him of such and such an imperfection, it is because he puts up with him as he is. He waits with patience the opportune moment. Then I must do likewise. I must pray and be quiet, be patient. Why be more demanding and impatient than God? So that, when I read that, really stuck with me. So when I'm irritated with flaws of my spouse or imperfections, which we all have them, that if God hasn't changed that person, then he obviously is patient enough and willing to allow them to get to that place at the speed that they are. And he's not pushing them, he's allowing them to have free will. He's not forcing them to change. And if God can be patient and loving and respectful to my spouse and allow him to be imperfect, allow me to be imperfect, right? He allows all of us to be imperfect. Then who am I to question that? Who am I to lose my patience with that? And God calls all of us to be patient with our spouses as if they were God's children. We are all God's children. So I am God's child. My husband is God's child. So I should treat him as such. That my spouse is not just my spouse. He's not just the man standing before me. He is a child of God. And in that, he is owed my respect and my patience and my love, regardless of his faults, regardless of his imperfections, that he is due the treatment that a child of God deserves, which is dignity and respect. And obviously, there are certain situations where if you're dealing with abuse, mental, physical, then you need to separate yourself from that situation and not put up with that. However, I do think that when we're just talking about flaws and imperfections, not abuse, but flaws and imperfections, that we all are owed a certain amount of patience with that because we're all human. And I think a lot of times we think, oh gosh, somebody else would be easier to live with. Someone else would be easier to put up with. Everybody has their stuff. It would just be a different cross. And I think if you truly have discerned and chosen your spouse with God's guidance, then that cross that you're dealing with that spouse was tailor made for you by God. And it's going to get you to heaven if you allow it. So I think that's the task too, is to allow the cross that you receive with your spouse, that you carry with your spouse, to, instead of bringing you both down, to lift you both up and help you to pursue patience, love, kindness, and the will of God. So again, nobody's perfect. There are no perfect Catholic wives. There are no perfect husbands. Uh, it's all imperfection. But there are definitely some saints that we can turn to for inspiration, and even just being patient with ourselves and understanding that God loves us. God loves our spouse, and He loves us right now, right where we're at. But He loves us too much to let us stay that way. I'll see you next time.